Let's take a look at chemical bonding. Okay, so we have these questions and they'll show up again at the end of the video so you can test yourself out. Chemical bond is an attraction between two or more blank. L shell can hold a maximum of how many electrons? So we want to be familiar with all of the shells, right? L shell, but also K shell, M shell, and N shell. Which type of bond is most likely to occur between two nonmetals, right? So that's going to get into ionic and covalent bonding. We want to know the difference there. What type of bond is formed between ions with opposite charges? Okay, so let's get it going. Okay, basics on chemical bonds. Okay, so a chemical bond is an attraction between two or more atoms. This forms a chemical. This is an electrostatic attraction, which is an attraction between positive and negative charges. In each atom, there are positively charged protons in the nucleus and negatively charged electrons orbiting around the outside. And it's the interaction of these charges that causes atoms to stick together with chemical bonds. Okay, so there we go, chemical bonds. And then we want to jump into ionic and then covalent. So ionic bonds are a chemical bond formed between two ions with opposite charges. Ionic bonds form, and was that one of our questions, opposite charges? No, it was not. Sorry about that. Could be though, easily could be a question. Ionic bonds form when one atom gives up one or more electrons to another atom. These bonds can form between a pair of atoms or between molecules and are the type of bond found in salts. You can recognize ionic compounds because they consist of a metal bonded to a nonmetal. That is one of the questions. Metal to a nonmetal is ionic. We want to have that in our minds for sure. Ionic bonds form between two atoms that have different electronegativity values. Because the ability to attract electrons is so different between the atoms, it's like one atom donates its electron to the other atom in the chemical bond. Okay, so we got ionic there, metal to nonmetal, and covalent. So covalent bonding, on the other hand, is when each atom shares a pair of electrons, with each atom contributing one electron. Covalent bonds happen between two nonmetal atoms. So again, there we go. Two nonmetal atoms means covalent, since nonmetal atoms have mostly full shells and benefit from sharing electrons. A water molecule, abbreviated as H2O, obviously, is an example of a polar covalent bond. The electrons are unequally shared, with the oxygen atom spending more time with the electrons than the hydrogen atoms. Since electrons spend more time with the oxygen atom, it carries a partial negative charge. A nonpolar bond, on the other hand, involves electrons being equally shared with a molecule. And so just sort of in the category of other stuff to know here, if the electronegative difference between two atoms is small, the atoms will form a polar covalent bond. However, if the difference is large, the atoms will form an ionic bond. And if there is no electronegativity, a nonpolar covalent bond is formed. And one note just on, like if in videos you see the concept of covalent and ionic, and it's like I've seen this in more than one video getting ready for this exam. That's just a sign that like it's likely to show up because it shows up in more than one topic that we're covering. So anything you see that's repeating, that should just be like in your mind, just marking like, okay, this is really important. Make sure I know this stuff. So that would certainly be true with covalent and ionic. It shows up several times. A hydrogen bond occurs when an atom of hydrogen that has a covalent bond with an electronegative atom forms a bond with a third atom. Fluorine, oxygen, and chlorine, as well as nitrogen, are frequently parts of hydrogen bonds because they have a strong electronegativity and are thus able to form more durable bonds. Metallic bonds are bonds that form between metal atoms, which you could probably guess, and are due to the free electrons that flow through the metal. This holds all the atoms together, making metal strong and hard to melt. Okay, with shells, the K shell can hold 2 electrons and is the first shell. The second shell, which is the L shell, can hold 8. The third shell, which is the M shell, can hold 18. And then finally, the fourth shell, which is the N shell, can hold 32. And then last concept here under other stuff to know, a cation is an atom that carries a positive charge. Protons are positive, neutrons are neutral, electrons are negative. Thus, to be a cation, an atom must have more protons than electrons. So that could easily be a question. Okay, and with that, we get back into our questions. Okay, so great time to hit the pause button, see if you can answer these questions. If you struggle with any of them, go back into the part of the video that talks about the specific question and make sure we're really comfortable, especially with all the differences between ionic and covalent bonds.